Order, please rise for Mayor Michael Fougere.
Please be seated, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the December 3rd meeting of City Council. If I could have a motion to adopt the public agenda. Councillor Young, a seconder, please. Okay. Councillor Hawkins, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. You'd like to have we won't do the minutes from last meeting. We'll go right into a meeting. I believe you have Councillor Bresciani and Councillor Bryce on the phone as well. Are you there? I guess that means it might be there. I don't know. We'll proceed in any case. So we'll get into what is really the continuation of our last council meeting, the agenda. These are reports tabled from our November 25th meeting of City Council. The first is a Public Works and Infrastructure Committee report on the wastewater master plan. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Worship. I rise to bring CR 19-106, wastewater master plan. And if I could...
Seconder for that, please. Councillor O'Donnell.
Okay, Your Worship, the Public Works Infrastructure Committee received a presentation on Wednesday at wastewater master plan, Thursday, November 14th. And we had a really good discussion on the report before recommending approval to Council. The wastewater master plan is a 25-year plan to provide guidance to the future wastewater-related decisions and actions. This plan outlines a number of goals, including providing reliable service, meeting regulations, and accommodating growth. The wastewater master plan aligns with its utilities 25-year financial model and the servicing agreement fees model to ensure that our wastewater service is sustainable now and into the future. So, Your Worship, this plan is not a financial commitment. Each year, elements of the plan will come forward as a part of the budget process. It's important to know that placeholders for the likely cost of the master plan have been included in the utility model already, before the full master plan is completed. Your Worship, the administration has a good idea of the kinds of projects, magnitude, investment, the project of magnitude of investments that are likely to be needed, and those placeholders have been very good for Your Worship. So conditions change over time, and no plan can consider all possible changes. This plan will receive regularly and adjusted, and will be adjusted as needed to address those changes and conditions. So this plan includes a number of actions. Periodically, progress will come to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee for reports and all that. So the committee seeks concurrence, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fundura, for your comments. We do have some other questions and comments. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I want to direct some questions to staff about kind of the current situation and how that leads into the future. And if I could begin with the lagoons. So if I remember correctly, when we built the new wastewater treatment plant, some or part of those lagoons were going to disappear. Can I ask first where they're at right now and what the future of the lagoons is, please?
Mr. Onright.
Through Your Worship, I'll ask Ms. Wilson to comment.
Ms. Wilson? Are you on yet?
There we go. Through you, Your Worship. The lagoons were always expected to be a part of our the system that can address larger rain events. So we always expected for some of the lagoons to remain as part of the system for that offline storage when we have those large events. As well, that space can be used for storing solids, so that provides us with a number of years of capacity for the biosolids that come from the plant. But I will ask Mr. Kuntz if he has any additional comments.
Mr. Kuntz.
Through you, Your Worship. That's right. The lagoons are very important in the whole scheme of things for protecting from those large rainfall events, but we are decommissioning them as we go, and we've got permission from the Ministry of Environment when we built the new wastewater treatment plant to dispose of biosolids in the lagoons. we're truly fortunate to have such asset at our disposal to appropriately dispose of these in an environmentally sensitive manner. So over time, the lagoons will become smaller in footprint. However, there's so much lagoon there, it'll take several years. So we'll maintain that nice balance of capacity, but also be able to dispose of our biosolids in an environmental way.
As a follow-up to that, could I just simply ask, over the years, we did experience some notion of smell, and that certainly has improved greatly. Just want to be clear about that, but based on what I was just told, could you just comment about what the future looks like, at least in terms of lagoons, for smell, please?
Ms. Wilson?
I'll ask Mr. Kuntz to speak.
Mr. Coons?
Through your worship, that's correct. We've experienced lesser odor issues over the past few years, and this was always expected as the plant was completed, as we moved away from a lagoon system to the facility treating the wastewater itself. Generally, and the most common occurrences of the odor are what we like to call spring turnover. And essentially, it's what happens is the lagoons freeze, and they freeze all the way to the bottom, and they trap some of the sediment and solids materials in the ice. And then in spring, when they start melting, they float to the top, and they actually flip over, and the solids are exposed to the atmosphere, and they haven't fully decomposed yet, so the odor comes off. And it's usually about a week or so we have that odor event, and over time, as the materials at the bottom of the lagoons decompose, that problem will get less and less.
Okay, good, thanks for that. Can I just switch to Oriole Place, please, and the construction? So if I remember correctly, we have a very large new pipe system that goes from that pumping station all the way out to the wastewater treatment plant. Is that it for that part? And because it is in my ward. And second of all, just give me a little update on where you're at with construction at the plant, please, on Oriole Place.
Ms. Wilson?
Through you, your worship. So last year, we completed the trunk, that first phase of the trunk relief initiative, which was the third force main out to the wastewater treatment plant from McCarthy Boulevard pumping station. That was used twice last year successfully to avoid the need to have any bypasses, so during large rain events. Now we are working on further upgrades to McCarthy Boulevard pumping station itself. So right now, we're operating from our secondary pumping station while that plant is having the pumps replaced. So we are going to be upsizing the pumps, we're adding some redundancy, so we will be able to handle, again, more capacity through that pinch point, because McCarthy Boulevard pumping station has been a pinch point for us. So that will add more capacity, again, allowing us to handle larger rainfall events. I believe that is through this year and into next year, it should be being commissioned. I'll ask Mr. Doney to add any comments.
Through you, your worship, that is correct. The construction is ongoing and expected to be done by the end of 2020.
And on the construction front, is there any noise, any that will affect the neighborhood?
Through you, your worship, the majority of the work is all internal, and so the large pumps have been removed with cranes. There'll be some cranes on site to reinstall things, but there'll be very little disruption to the neighborhood.
Perfect. So I'm going to switch to the actual plant. So I'm wondering, we heard a few years ago, and it was really good news, that we could have potentially sold some of our treated effluent to a potash plant. They are not under construction. Is there anybody else that's put their hand up to say they would like to buy some? And if you could, just describe that situation, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Through you, your worship. At present, we don't have any other mines or any other groups that have expressed interest in purchasing access to effluent. We made the change in the bylaw that would establish a rate should anyone be coming to us for that purpose. And we do continue to monitor for other opportunities that there might be for use of any of our byproducts. At present, the contract with Western Potash is the only one.
Good, and I'll just finish on that topic with, have we ever thought of using the effluent? Do we have any purpose or reason, to use that?
Ms. Wilson?
Through you, your worship, we don't have any immediate purpose right now, but again, we do try to pay attention to what those opportunities may be. Being able to use the treated effluent does require us to be able to get it to the places where we could make use of it. Yeah. It's certainly a thing that could be explored. I know that we've spoken about some opportunities, for example, using, there's nutrients still in that effluent. There are possibilities, but it's not an active project that we're working on.
Gotcha, thanks very much. I'm good now.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other speakers to the report? Councillor Frinder, do you want to close debate? Councillor Bresciani or Councillor Bryce, do you have any questions?
I have no questions on this.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Councillor Bresciani, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to ask about the pumping station or holding station in the creek. Can I just ask when it's under construction now, when is the due date for that construction to be done and when it will be in the works and running? And the second piece to that is what has been the cost of the investment for this? Thank you.
Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, so I believe the construction is to be complete in 2020, 2021. And the cost, I'll ask Mr. Doney to comment on that.
Mr. Doney?
Through you, your worship, the cost to upgrade the Creeks pump station is approximately $10 million.
Councillor Bresciani, go ahead.
Thank you. So that will be, will this be one where, again, Councillor Donald talked a little bit about the smells and all that, that there's kind of new, if you want to say, stuff that's kind of in there that residents are not going to be worried about, that there's kind of a, something where I know we've heard a little bit in the west. Is this something that this new plant will, we won't have to worry about? To the chair.
Mr. Doney?
Through you, your worship, so the upgrades here are to accommodate growth in the area, and it is increasing the storage. However, the storage is only used during wet weather events, so we don't expect any increased odors from this facility. And if there are any concerns, we can address them as they come up.
Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you very much.
You finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to ask about greywater systems. I understand how difficult it is to implement a system of greywater when the system's already been built 50, 60 years ago. But I'm wondering if there's any study going on about the possibility of greywater systems, particularly in new subdivisions or in other places where the opportunity may present itself.
Ms. Wilson?
Through you, your worship, greywater is something that we are certainly aware of and that we expect there's going to continue to be developments and new opportunities that are out there. It isn't something we've been actively pursuing at the moment because we have had some specific large projects we've needed to deliver in order to meet our commitments to the Water Security Agency and address those basic capacity issues. However, it is certainly something that we're continuing to monitor, and we will be looking for opportunities as and when they come up.
So just to follow up to that very encouraging answer, Your Worship, if there was a proposal for a new subdivision, I know of none on the horizon, but if there was, would that be something that you would discuss with the developer and possibly look to provide those systems in the new developments?
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Onright?
Through your worship, so through our development services area and discussions with our water group, we would have a look at those and through development services consider any opportunities that there may be in that development and in discussions with the developer. I think, you know, as we review our master plan each year and bring those projects forward, we're in constant conversations with our development services area, and if there were opportunities, we certainly would bring those forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is something that could be important as we move towards being a sustainable city by 2050. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. See no other speakers. I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So we have three motions at table from the November 25th meeting. I'll move to the first one. This is a notice of motion. So this would be Councillor Flagel to read just the motion itself.
Okay, thank you. There be it resolved that City Council not approve the proposed Regina Police Budget's 2020 budget as submitted by the Board of Police Commissioners. As per number 2, as per provisions of Section 32-2 of the Police Act 1990, return the proposed budget to the Board of Police Commissioners as the budget is seen to be inadequate for the challenges and pressures facing the Regina Police Service, and request that the Board of Police Commissioners return to City Council with a revised budget which addresses the concerns outlined in 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. And Councillor Flagel, I'm going to ask you to take the chair, if you don't mind,
Sure.
for motion number 23. Mr. Chair, I would request unanimous consent to waive notice of motion to discuss the motion on the lead service connection program.
Okay.
Motion. Could you ask a question?
Call the question. All those in favor of unanimous?
In favor?
In
You're
favor?
good? Thank you.
Thank
have
you
it.
very much to my colleagues, and anticipating discussing this, and I know that this has been topical for the past while. I won't read the whereas clauses; those are I'll be part of my commentary. But the first one is to accelerate the lead service connection program to replace them by 2025, and then we expand the program to include replacement of the homeowner's side of the connection, as well as the city side of the connection, incorporating best practices of other cities and creating a program that would see the city fund in whole or in part the replacement of the upfront costs, with residents paying the amount over time. Extending the amount of time fillers will be used to up to 3 years, and also adding orthophosphate to the city's water supply to mitigate the lead in the water. And then we enhance the communication to homeowners to give them a better understanding as to what is before them. And finally, that the program continue to be funded by the utility. This is asking for a report to come back by March 2020. So I know members of council may have specific interests or asks that would be involved, such as extending the filter program as one example. And I would encourage members to accept the report and think about what we want to do with this as it comes back in the spring of next year. We do have, I want to say very clearly, and members know this, we have safe water that is lead-free at the source. At Buffalo Pound into the city, it is lead-free. These are homes that have been built in the 1950s and sometimes 60s that have lead connections on the homeowner side and on the city side. Report reflects that there's about 5% that needs to be replaced, about 3,600 that we know of, and this is to accelerate that program. I'd also say that we're looking for the source of funding to be through the utility and not through the taxpayers and the property taxes. The implications will be spelled out by the administration when it reports back in March 2020. This is an important element of health and safety for members of our city to ensure that we have safe drinking water. Again, we know on the city side of about 3,600. We're not aware of what may be on the homeowner side, and we want to encourage those who have testing to get the testing done right away, that live in the areas where letters have been sent out, to ensure water is tested, and if there is lead in the water, we have filters to move forward on that one, and we would encourage them, by way of this new program, to convert the connection on their side over to lead-free connections to ensure their safety as well. So I'd ask members of council to support the motion and move forward in a comprehensive way to deal with this issue as soon as we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions? There we go. Councillor Stevens.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Through the chair, and thank you, Your Worship, for bringing this forward. I have an amendment to the motion. Since this is asking for a report, and we want some clarity on the costing and the logistics, my amendment will be to point 3, extending the amount of time filters are provided to homeowners to 3 years. I'd like to amend that to read, extending the amount of time filters are provided to homeowners until such time that the city lead connection is replaced.
I take that as a friendly amendment, Mr. Chair. I think that's fine.
Okay.
Terrific, thank you.
I want to just state the reason why I mentioned 3 years is because we are looking at orthophosphate, which also helps in this manner as well. But I'm fine with that friendly amendment.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Go ahead.
Final point through the chair, and I appreciate that. And I'm curious about my colleague's perspective on this, but one of the amendments might be to change the destination in March 2020 from the executive committee to Public Works and Infrastructure. So it would be an amendment. I'd be curious about the thoughts on that, simply because Public Works and Infrastructure gets the updates. It's the committee that's actually tasked with reviewing and overseeing this particular profile. Ultimately, it would go to council one way or the other. Considering what we're dealing with at our executive committee already, it seems to make sense that we would send this down the typical channels, which would be Public Works, Infrastructure, then on to council.
And again, this is a friendly amendment. I'm fine with that.
Sure.
It actually makes sense to move it to the committee.
Keep rolling, you're getting your way.
Can we put bike lanes in here somewhere? Okay. No, thank you.
You good? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am wondering about landlords that own property and receive the letter from the city and then do nothing about their property. They choose to do nothing. And do those renters get anything from the city to tell them that they can get filters?
Mr. Unright?
Through you, Vice Chair. The tenants also receive letters,
Okay.
so they are made aware as well as the landlords. The uptake on response, what we get back, is quite minimal. But we will consider in the report that we bring back, consider approaching communication plan a little differently moving forward than we have to date. So yes, they do, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Young, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Mancinelli, we're talking about the motion on lead piping. Any questions?
On here. Being as I was late for the meeting, I'll just talk to Councillor O'Donnell for a second.
Okay.
Pick up what I missed.
Yeah, no worries. I have a couple of questions. I know this is going to be a cost, there'll be numbers on the cost, but do we have any idea what approximately each household is costing us today to do a replacement on city and/or resident side? Mr. Unright?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The cost on the residential side is between $8,000 and $10,000.
Per household?
$6,000, somewhere
Okay.
in there, per household.
Per household. Okay, and that's our side and their side, or just the residential side?
That's on the residential
And
side.
what about our side? Is there any?
I'll ask Ms. Wilson to comment.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, the cost is on average in the $10,000 to $12,000 range for the city side. It can be higher. It depends on the length of the service. Likewise, the length of the service and the complexity of the situation has an impact on what the cost is on the private side. It can be lower than the six, but that's probably a fair range. So we use on average about $10,000 to $12,000 for planning purposes.
Kind of like water main breaks, you're never sure until you get in there. Exactly. Have we had any issue with residents not being well, getting sick? Do we know of any of this kind of stuff, or is this more of a precautionary for the finishing off these 3,600 roughly houses?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So normally that would get reported through our QHR, through the health region.
Right.
I'm not aware of the city of Regina being notified of someone who has been sick, but I'll ask Ms. Wilson to comment.
Ms. Wilson?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, we do work closely with the Saskatchewan Health Authority. We don't have information about individuals who've specifically been ill as a result of this, but that would be reported through the Health Authority, and they would address that issue. So it hasn't been escalated to us through them.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? You want to close?
No.
Council, oh, now you put it on. Okay, you got to be quicker. Councilor Findura, go ahead.
To you, Mr. Chair. A question, how would the resident figure out or get a chance to figure out how long of that lead pipe that comes from the meter into the ground, how far does it go? How do you test that? To figure out what the cost would be?
Mr. Onright?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it would be from the city's connection point on the street to the house. So that's the length that would have to be replaced if it was on the property side. It's not a piece up, it's
Okay.
all.
So it's either all or nothing. Is that what you're saying?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bresciani or Bryce, any questions?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Councilor Bresciani.
If I can just ask if the people that have been informed about the concern about the lead in the pipe that goes to the homeowner, do we know how many, and we've offered the option of filters, do we know how many homeowners have not taken up the credit for the filters? Do we have any of those statistics, or do we keep records of that? To the chair?
Mr. Onright?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Ms. Wilson to comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't have the current numbers. We do have relatively small uptake on the number of filters. I believe that in the most recent round of letters and so on that has been going out, we've handed out about 92, I think, and last year there were several hundred that were handed out of the 3,600 letters that we sent. So it's not a particularly large uptake, although it is higher than many cities have seen.
Councilor Bresciani?
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Councilor Bryce?
No, thank you. I don't have any questions regarding this.
Okay, just a sec. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I believe I read in some of the communications previously that we had about a 20% uptake on the letters that were sent out. So that might in some way answer Councilor Bresciani's question.
Did you hear that, Councilor Bresciani?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, good. Councilor Mancinelli?
Thank you. I was wondering if administration has any idea of the homeowner portion of lead pipes in our city. I know you have a fairly good handle on the city's portion. What about the homeowner portion that might still contain lead pipes?
Mr. Onright?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Ms. Wilson to comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we know that there were about 12,000 that were likely installed in the first place. We know there's been numerous changeouts that have been done. We don't have records on what has been done on the private side, and that is a piece of work we will be looking at within the work that we will do on this report, including how we would plan to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor?
That's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. No other questions? You're good? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Yes.
Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flagel. Thank you, everyone, for your support. The next motion is Councilor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is notice of motion. Be it resolved that the Priorities and Planning Committee be disestablished and its terms of reference be added to the terms of reference for the Executive Committee outlined in Table 3 of the committee bylaw. Any scheduled meetings for the Planning and Priorities Committee be used to schedule additional meetings of the Executive Committee, and the City Solicitor be instructed to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend the committee bylaw, bylaw number 2009-40, and the procedural bylaw, bylaw number 9004, to affect these changes.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Now we'll move into bylaws and related reports, again tabled from the November 25th meeting. Report 107, this is the 2020 Pest Control Officer appointment. Councillor Stevens.
Great, thank you. This one's pretty self-explanatory. 2020 Pest Control Officer appointments. Can I get a seconder, please?
Councillor Fundura.
Terrific, thank you. Would administration like to add anything that's not already present in this report?
Don't think so. I think you're on your own on this one.
That's all I got.
Any
Point
debate?
away.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next report is the cemetery schedule and fee review. Councillor Stevens.
Terrific. Well, it's said that you can't escape death and taxes. This report has both. I would like to introduce this with one amendment, and that would mean the inclusion of the Field of Honor fee as described in Schedule A be amended to $895 for 2020. Can I get a seconder, please?
Seconder for that. Okay.
Terrific. Actually, one
Councilor Murray?
question that came from committee, and this is through the chair to administration, the fee increase. What does it go to? Is the cemetery, like other infrastructure, managed on a fee-for-service basis? In other words, we're not making money off this. This is simply a cost recovery.
Ms. Harlock.
Your worship, that is correct. The cemeteries are operated on a cost recovery basis, so approving the fee increase as well as the bylaw changes will ensure that the cemeteries continue to operate in such a manner.
Thank you for that. Councillor O'Donnell, you have some comments or questions?
I have questions. I've read the detail on this, and I need to understand a couple things. My first question is, as time has changed, are there more people not using caskets and going in the ground and going into other things? I've just been curious, because there's a lot of information here. So has there been a transition on that?
Ms. Harlock.
Through you, your worship, I'll ask Mr. Morgan to answer that.
Mr. Morgan.
Through you, your worship, yes, over the last 10 years, there has been a transitional change from traditional to cremation. 10 years ago, we were looking at approximately 65% of our interments were made up of traditional. You'd see those stats reversed today, whereas approximately 65% are cremation versus traditional.
Thanks for that. I just a comment, if you don't mind, the cost of internment in the ground versus being in a columbarium. Thank you for that. Is significantly different. Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, with the columbaria, through you, your worship, through the columbaria, it's the infrastructure is already in place. Obviously, that's a cost, but it's a lower cost than a traditional using equipment, labor, more labor and fuel attached to it. It's a pretty transactional interment process.
Thank you. There's a couple of notions here that I must admit I never really looked at before. So it is, I'll read one. Cremation surcharge of $185. We don't cremate, do we?
Mr. Morgan.
Through you, your worship, no, we do not cremate, but it's a process of handling the cremation in itself and the administrative fees with that.
Okay, so some of the other things that are a scattering, niche surcharge, and all that, that's all related to that.
Mr. Morgan.
Through you, your worship, yes.
Good, thanks. I just need to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Bresciani or Councillor Bryce, do you have any questions on the report?
No questions on this
No
report.
questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Stevens, do you want to close debate? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed?
In favor.
Motion's carried. Next report is Report 109. This is from Finance and Administration, the Community Nonprofit Tax Exemption Policy. Councillor Bryce, do you want to introduce this?
Sure. This is CR 19-109, which is the Finance and Admin Community Nonprofit Tax Exemption Policy. So I will move the recommendations outlined in the report.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hawkins. Debate on the report itself. Discussion. Councillor Bresciani, you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's
In
carried.
favor.
Thank you. Our last report is Priors and Planning Committee, Civic Art and Cultural Connections Policy. Councillor Flagel, would you mind introducing that?
Sure. Priorities and Planning Committee recommend the following priority committee, that civic arts and cultural connection policy provided in Appendix A of this report be approved. Municipal arts policy be repealed. That bylaw number 2002-39, the Heritage Building Material Review Advisory Committee bylaw be repealed, and the city solicitor be instructed to prepare the necessary bylaw. Number 4, the administration be directed to include a capital funding proposal for acquisition and maintenance of the city's civic arts and cultural collection within the 2020 budget process. It's approved.
Seconder? Councillor Murray? The administration, do you have any comments on the report before I open up for questions and comments by council? Ms. Harlock?
Through you, Your Worship. So the report today recommends approval of this policy, and this policy provides the guidance on the care, maintenance, and renewal of the city's public art and other collections. Along with the approval of this policy, administration is recommending the repeal of the municipal arts policy and the bylaw with respect to the Heritage Building Material Review and Advisory Committee. And that $150,000 be part of the annual allocation towards this program to ensure that the maintenance of our civic arts collection is maintained over the years. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Harlock. Questions from members of council? We do have questions. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that Councillor Flagel is interested, as am I, in knowing what progress is being made on the glockenspiel.
Ms. Harlock.
Through you, Your Worship. So we are moving forward with that project right now. So we are working with the a contractor to move that project forward. We did have a bump in the road, as you know, with a process that had taken place last year where we didn't get the contract all the way through. So we are moving forward to see that to fruition with respect to the glockenspiel.
Any idea when it might be completed?
Through you, Your Worship, I would ask Ms. Shaley.
Ms. Shaley.
Through you, Your Worship, we're just in negotiations with the contractor. So I don't have a target date. We're trying to have it in place as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any other comments from members of council before I give this to Councillor Flagel to close debate? Councillor Bresciani or Councillor Bryce?
Nothing from me.
I have no questions or comments on this report. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Flagel to close debate.
Thanks. We will be dancing in the streets in August of this year at the glockenspiel, just so you know.
You may be dancing in the streets, Councillor Flagel.
We might be. Yeah, we might be doing that. But the one thing that always got me about our art collection was that it's sitting in storage. And at one time, we talked about getting it out into the public, getting it out to the airports, getting it out to all the public buildings, City Hall, rotation. Have we ever done anything like that? And are we in the process of, because my understanding, we have, I don't know how many pieces, a ton of them, donated to us, bought by us, given to us. Are we in the process of moving that stuff around for everybody to get a look at?
Ms. Harlock?
Worship, we do have an extensive art collection. It's quite impressive. And we do have different programs in place where we are doing circulations of our pieces. And I might ask Ms. Hill to go through some of the things that her area is working on in terms of getting our collection out there for the public to see.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill?
Through you, Your Worship, there have been some exciting developments for our team in terms of some of the circulation of the pieces recently. With the new cafeteria, you'll notice that there are several pieces that have been installed there that weren't previously on public display. We also have the plein air gallery that's been installed at the outside of the Neil Balcole Civic Arts Center, which displays 5 different pieces from local significant artists so that members of the public can enjoy those while they go through West Sherman Park.
Councillor Flagel?
Thanks. Have we talked to the airport, the hospitals, in terms of putting a rotation of artwork in those facilities? Because I know Regina Plains Museum was kind of starting to do some of that, or was thinking about it, but Did that ever come around?
Ms. Hawryluk?
Through you, Your Worship, I might ask Ms. Hill to go through which groups that we've been working with and who we will work with in the future.
Ms. Hill?
Through you, Your Worship, this is one of the areas that's much clearer now with the new policy, where we are in a position to be able to look at loans and partnerships with other organizations. One of the more significant moves that we've made recently has been a more active program of accepting loans from other collections. So you've seen those in the front foyer of City Hall, but just looking at different opportunities to ensure that the public has access to the art is certainly a priority within the policy.
Thanks. One quick other thing on the glockenspiel was that at the last meeting we had, there was sort of a discussion about we'll work with a contractor to kind of keep it away from the summertime events. And I think at the end of that conversation, it was like, if somebody wants to build it in July, we'll make it work, because we just built the tourism center in the summertime, so it didn't really displace much there. So hopefully negotiating with the contractor, we don't wait till November to decide to put it up because it's not busy. Just do it. Thanks. Close the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. No other speakers ask a question. All those in favor? Opposed?
In favor?
Motion's carried. We have for bylaws, Councillor Flagel.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hawkins, that bylaws 2019 55, 59, 60, and 63 be introduced and read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
In favor?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Findura, that bylaws 2019-55, 59, 60, and 63 be read a second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Agreed?
Moved by myself,
Hold on,
seconded
hold
by,
on. Opposed?
oh, okay, sorry.
Carried. Councillor, go ahead.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Murray, that council hereby consent to bylaws 2019-55, 59, 60, and 63 going to a third reading at this meeting.
This requires unanimous consent, so I'll ask for, to hear from Councillor Bryce and Councillor Bresciani as well. All those in favor?
In favor?
In favor?
It's carried unanimously. Councillor Flagel?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Young, that bylaw 2019-55, 59, 60, and 63 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Councillor Massanelli, you second it. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks,
In favor.
everyone. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Bresciani and Councillor Bryce.